Welcome. These will be my thoughts on Fear the Walking Dead, Season 1, Episode 3, The Dog. The episode is rated TVMA, so will this video be. There will be spoilers for the episodes of this show leading up to and including this one, and perhaps gonna spoil at least some of the first 5 seasons of the main Walking Dead show. And yeah, another episode that I absolutely loved. It feels really weird to, it's one thing that as I watch this show, these are also days where I play the Telltale games. I'm up to the third one, A New Frontier. But then in addition to that, yesterday I watched the most recent 28 Years Later, lot of zombie media. All of it amazing for me recently. Anyway, I think so. I believe I've already mentioned in one of the first 2 videos on this particular show, I really dig this gradual escalation. And yeah, this episode continues that trend. Let's see, yeah, this is going to be more or less chronological. So yeah, it was, I thought it worked really well. This thing of, for a while, they kind of just have to stay put, because the fuck else are they going to do? And the you hear the beeping of a fire alarm, and then the wall starts getting hot and heavy, and yeah. Um, yeah, I like little things like, let's see if I can remember the names. Daniel telling Chris, put that down, because like there's he might need a weapon, and there's maybe also just some curiosity, but yeah, this is not his, doesn't belong to him. And yeah, Travis saying, what are they going to break in here for? Some combs? And, apologizing to Daniel afterwards. But yeah, I think it works really well that, there's basically, it's an episode with 2 fathers and 3 mothers trying to take care of their offspring, not necessarily doing it in the exact same way, but, different people react in different ways to the same circumstance sometimes. And I think that does pretty much, yeah. So in the residence, we have the 3 members of the family, and they decide to play Monopoly. And I did kind of like, Alicia pointing out, it's kindergarten capitalism, which, yeah, it genuinely is surreal to think that, and you can look this up, you don't have to take my word for it, in general, please do. But the original game was made by like I want to say communist who was trying to criticize capitalism by showing how terrible it was and purposely made it boring, and then a capitalist bought it and changed the rules so that there wouldn't be this, genuinely quite compelling, argument against capitalism, in the hands of people who are actually anti-capitalist. And yeah, but yeah, I like the little sibling moments with the what was the he teases her about which piece she wants to play as, and let's see. I like the bit where they hear, distant gunshots, and it's like, are we doing this? Are we really just gonna pretend like everything's fine? but what else are they gonna do, you know? And so Nick is like, Mom, roll, you know? And let's see, think that covers that scene. So yeah, ultimately, you know, the others simply have to run away. And it's one of those things, you know, when you're depicting something like you know, this was a peaceful protest against police violence that ended up a riot. You know, like there is actual violence being committed by someone other than law enforcement. Obviously, you'll want to be careful. And personally, I thought they did a good job making it clear. I mean, the problem here is law enforcement. You know, you've got the firefighters, I think, spraying water, and that ends up, you know, Griselda getting her leg injured. She had nothing to do with this, you know? But I think... I mean, and another thing is the fact that, you know, as soon as they open the door, yeah, several people run in. They run right past I mean, it's not like they don't see them. They're right there. They don't want to hurt people, you know? So you know, some of them do, you know, damage property and, you know, such. And I know that there are conservatives in America who think that private property matters more than human lives. Hence that whole, once the looting starts, the shooting starts. Remember that guy who bragged about killing a bunch of people who were, you know, trying to get supplies because the government wasn't taking care of them in the wake of a disaster? And then he ended up, well, I suppose you can look that part up yourself, but yeah, I didn't like that guy. I'm not glad he's dead, but what a fucking thing to brag about. Jesus Christ. Anyway, I think I think the next thing was the dog, and that was, yeah, very nicely done, because like, yeah, you're here again, you know, like in the first two episodes, you hear a noise that we, the audience who've seen, you know, the main show, even if you haven't watched 5 seasons of it, if you just watch the first season of the first show, you know, yeah, you hear that kind of breathing and like, you know, various noises. Yeah, we think, oh, that's a walker. And then, you know, it turns out to just be the dog. And they made sure we knew there was a dog, and we were like, oh, that, you know. And then a walker starts, I don't know, I guess he got hungry. And, yeah, there's just something about, like, if your horror media has a dog being killed by an antagonistic individual, yeah, that really fucks with us, you know. Yeah. Let's see. I think that might just about cover the yeah, I think that's when they so the yeah, I like the Liza telling, you know, saying this thing about telling Chris, you are not leaving my side, you know, because that yeah, circumstances call for that kind of helicopter parenting. And yeah, you know, the thing about they have to get Griselda help, and so they're going to try to get her to a hospital, but you know, the hospitals are, you know, yeah, there's zombies there, and you know, people with guns are shooting the yeah, it's very Left 4 Dead. And so yeah, they know, I mean, what are we going to do? Just drive around to every hospital? They're all going to be like this. And so, the thing about like you have to take me to where you live, because I can't go back to where I live, and you came into my place. I really appreciate the way that Daniel, like, I could understand if some people don't really like him, but like you can understand where he's coming from. Like he's not just like callous and evil or something. He genuinely is trying to do what he feels is best for his family. And let's see, yeah, once yeah, you have the part where Nick is taking some of the pills, and he's going to he's crushing them, so he's going to like do them as a line, I think is how you say that in English. And I think that does bring us to, yeah. So the we have the thing about, they have to run from one place to another, and so Travis of course thinks they're still at the first one, and so they have to run back before he gets too close to, I think Peter was the, yeah, really, really tense. And I remember reading reviews where people were really frustrated by Madison and Travis still, after the end of the first episode, still acting like, oh, this is just someone who's like sick. We just have to, rather than staying clear of them. I don't know. I guess if it goes on for like forever, so far it just feels to me like they're struggling to accept how things have changed. And yeah, at first I was thinking, I don't really need like really deeply memorable zombie designs on this show, because like, these are fresh zombies. They're barely cold yet, and they haven't gone through, there's no waterlogging, there's no like decomposition, none of that. Tar, shit like that. But or is it oil? Something like that. But then Daniel goes and fixes it all by doing something awesome, like shoot Peter in the fucking face. Like, Jesus Christ. And yeah, really, really solid, really convincing work on after the face gets, Jesus. And I think that brings us to, let's see, let's see. Right, we have the thing about, him, he's gonna call his cousin, and then, it's very clear from the Dora's face, he did not call his cousin. And yeah, oh right, before Travis returns home, I really like the discussion where Nick is like, I think Travis is with his family. He went to his ex-wife, and Madison's like, no, he went for his son, and Nick is like, yeah, he went for his family. And yeah, I think that might bring us to, yeah, and the way that they are still, holding back on telling Alicia, although, by the end of this episode, she has some idea of how bad things are. And yeah, the thing about, Liza and Madison talking, and this thing of like, I know that it wouldn't hurt you as much as it would hurt Travis if he had to, finish me off, as for you if you have to. So I'm asking you, you have to do that for me, And yeah, she comes very close to finishing off Suzu. Does that make Peter pee-pee? And yeah, Travis talks her out of it, and then, Patrick comes home, and yeah, I was genuinely worried. I mean, yeah, it was the lesser of the evils. He's traumatized, but there's some chance he's not infected. That depends on whether or not any of the blood got into his system rather than just on to him. And I think that, let's see. So I have to admit, I do not speak much Spanish at all, and someone decided not to subtitle the Spanish into English. It just says speaking Spanish in brackets. So a lot of what was said between the family members there, the Salazars, I have no clue. Are they related to Rose Salazar? I gotta see her in more stuff. Anyway, but yeah, there was definitely something about, your father's trying to handle a difficult situation, and they're good people. I did pick that one up even before he responded in English. And yeah, good people die sooner. That is the thing. Like, it's, yeah. And yeah, he's teaching Chris about the gun. I will say that felt a little bit like this thing of saying, how I feel about guns. Like, okay, I'm sorry. Listen, I favor gun control. I am very much, but there comes a time. I don't know. I think they're trying to say that Travis is trying to hold on to. He's still very good. He's refusing to let this turn him into something else, and that could be a problem. He could end up getting someone hurt by refusing to accept the things have changed. Now, I think that does bring us to... I guess that is when the military do arrive. And yeah, so we already know from the main show that the military ends up not being able to contain the situation. I mean, technically they weren't talking about LA, they were more talking about... No, I guess did they mean the entire country? I forget how specific they got with that, but I could certainly imagine. Like, I feel like certainly if they got full control over it, they would probably end up going to Georgia. So, yeah, I figure these military are going to end up failing. And yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see the process of, because like right now they seem to have it under control. They very quickly and efficiently take out the infected without injuring anyone else. They're showing so much more restraint than ice. And you have that one who's like taking names and kicking ass, and yeah, I like the line about, she like chuckles or something, goes, "That's a big family," because that's just the thing, isn't it? Are they one family, or are they two? Maybe even three. I feel like that's going to be something that's explored in the next, and until the end of the episode, it was going to be that the Salazars was going to stay in the house, and everybody else would go on the road. But by the end of this episode, yeah, they are staying in the house. The military demanded, which is also, I think, that could definitely be an issue. What if, you know, and are they here to save these people or just control the situation, whether it ends up, yeah. And I think that does bring us to the yeah, Nick saying out loud, she's not sick, she's dead. Jim. And yeah. I am a little worried about how Alicia is going to take this now that, so both Travis and Maddie have been very careful to not tell her the whole truth. Nick seems to feel like they should, or he feels like. I also like the little thing of, she said, I can't sleep when I'm waiting for someone to come home. Got that, Nick? Which, yeah, does help explain, she could be a little hard on him. She took care of him once it was just the two of them in multiple situations in the first couple of episodes. But, yeah, she is still frustrated with him for that. I guess that, let's see. Does that pretty much cover? I feel like there's at least one more thing. While I try to remember, I will say I'm not sure I have any recommendation that, like, super... Well, I guess, okay, so a YouTube video, fairly recent, that is also in part about, like, military. This Is How You Get Jarhead Sequels by Dan Olson. Really, really excellent. I guess that does pretty much... Just real quick, gonna mentally fast forward through the episode. Yeah, I think the ending does a really good job of, because, like, on the one hand, a lot of people who watched this episode had watched enough of the original show to know eventually the military fail. And, yeah, it's this thing of, like, well, is this gonna be good for them, and yeah, the thing about, well, Maddie gave a lot of the pills to Griselda because she needs them, and Nick is like, they're not family. And yeah, I could imagine this could drive a wedge between, because, like, again, I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for addicts. So I'm not saying it to, like, be cruel, but it is a fact that an addict can be very unpleasant towards those that the addict feels is why they don't have the drugs that they want to do, so and meanwhile, I mean, if he does confront a member of the Salazar clan, like, they might respond, Griselda actually needs it. You just want it. You could have chosen to not do drugs in the first place. And I think that pretty much... Let's see. Yeah, as usual, great discussions about, how far should you go? What is the right approach to situations like this? The character exploration continues to be really strong. And let's see. Right. When Alicia said, "That's not Matt." Does she believe that? Does she just feel the need to, I mean, because now she fully understands that's what that's why they wanted her away from Matt. And, it's obviously and understandably difficult for her to accept. But it is also the reasonable, it is the most logical conclusion, like, even before they saw that he had been bitten, that is the, yeah. I think that might just about cover. I feel they did a good job of, so the riot was, a source of danger, but ultimately the characters did not spend that long on screen escaping it. Like, for a while they hid from it, and then as soon as they opened the door, I don't know, 2 minutes later, they were in the car driving away from there. I felt like that worked. It wasn't really, you know, the show is about how society is, at least so far, how society is collapsing because of Trump. I mean, the zombies and the yeah, it's yeah. Okay, so I'll just very briefly note, obviously, I don't want anything bad to happen to Trump, but I do think it would probably be good if, through political process, he was removed from office before he causes more harm. Now, I think that might bring us to the, let's see, what's the other thing there? Yeah, so the riot is showing how things are falling apart, but it's not like I don't think it would be super interesting if we spent like a lot of time with them just dealing with the riot, and instead because they did accomplish things. The fact that the riot slowed them down, there was that thing about this should be over in 1 hour, 2 hour tops. You said that 2 hours ago, you know. And Nick is saying, I don't think Travis is coming back. Also really like that Chris is calling Travis dad. He does appreciate his father is trying to protect him. And also these little things, you've got the thing where he's, saying, no, but I need, and then Travis is like, no, 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 I know what a broken nose is. I'll help take care of you. It's, yeah. He's still struggling to let his father in because of the divorce. And yeah, you have that thing about, so she's a nurse, and now she's thinking, I should have become a doctor. I have heard that is something some nurses, find themselves, struggling with. And I think that pretty much covers the entire episode. Let's see. And also the way that, now the radio is talking about, what is happening, because at this point it is impossible to conceal. It is very clear that there is something big going on, so it is being covered by mainstream media, which I guess means it has nothing to do with Grok CSAM.